Alert from iPad software update.
Hi, good morning. Good morning, everyone. I'm not very sure if it's streaming right now. Can you give me a confirmation on the chat box if audio, video, everything is okay? Hi, good morning. Good morning, everyone. Okay. I'm not very sure if it's streaming right now. Can you give me a confirmation on the chat box if audio, video, everything is okay? Hi, good morning. Sorry, wait a minute. Good. All right.
From iPad software update.
Okay, good to know. So let me just kind of get the lay of the land here, like set up a format of what we plan to do. So today is going to be about a 5-hour long session. The first 2.5 hours we're going on YouTube. After that, the session will be conducted on the Zoom link for the FinTree participants. So the first part of this video is going to sit on YouTube, and we're starting with a new subject. We're starting with a new reading called capital budgeting. Okay. Now, just to give you a perspective of how you want to think of capital budgeting, or in general corporate finance, most of the CFA level 1 candidates, for them, it's the easiest subject. Okay, so it's like, it's one of those subjects that you want to start studying with every time you decide that aaj se padhai shuru karna hai, like I want to start studying from today. The subject that you pick up, that happens to be corporate finance, and the reading that you pick up, that happens to be capital budgeting. So it's easy, it's fun, and it's extremely practical. It's one of those readings that you learn today with me here, and by evening you can start applying it on various decisions in your life. So let's just set up a background of what capital budgeting is. You would have to give me a few seconds to set up my screen. I'm going to create a separate PDF for today's class notes. These class notes will also be available in the YouTube description. Okay, so if at a later stage you want to download these class notes, either you can download them from the YouTube description link, or you can download them from the FinTree class notes section, right? Whichever area you find more comfortable with. So let me just first give you a background of what capital budgeting is before we deep dive. Okay, we'll do a few examples. You'll understand this better. Let us say the first company. Okay, let us say it is a tobacco manufacturing company. Okay, now if you've ever studied a tobacco business, it's a beautiful business with really high margins. Okay, so in India, for example, we have a company called ITC, Indian Tobacco Company, or there is another company called VST. Both of these companies have really high operating profit margins. That means they make their profitability is really, really good. So a business like tobacco, it generates a lot of cash. Okay, so we typically call some of these businesses as cash cows. You keep on milking cash out of these businesses. So there's going to be a lot of cash coming out of it. Now, what these businesses think is, they think that, what do I do with this cash? Okay, so maybe maybe I take this cash and give it back to my shareholders in the form of dividend. Right? So how much dividend to pay is also, dividend means just sharing profits of the company in the form of cash with the shareholders. So how much dividend to pay is a part of corporate finance, uh, but not capital budgeting. That's a separate topic. Okay, so how much dividend to pay. But alternatively, I can decide that, I can simply invest this money. Correct, I can simply deploy this money. So then the question comes, okay, fine, I want to invest this money. Where do I invest this money with? Okay, so for example, let's say someone like ITC, they've generated massive amount of cash over a period of time, and they've invested that money into different type of businesses, right? So maybe there could be a decision that I will expand, my existing business. So maybe I will set up one more manufacturing plant, right? Maybe I will set up, expand distribution network. Maybe I will take my brand to Sri Lanka. I'll take my brand to Bangladesh. Maybe I'll expand in the Europe. So that's one way of doing it. Or uh, instead of expanding my existing business where I feel the growth might not be, so good, maybe let me go on something like, look at something like FMCG, right? Fast moving consumer goods. Or maybe go and, get into hotels. Okay. Or maybe let me go and get into agri related businesses. So every time I have to do a corporate investment, right? So these are not your traditional financial investment where you're putting your money into stocks, you're putting your money into, bonds. You're not really thinking here. What you're thinking is that I want to invest money into my own business. And the question that you want to ask yourself in this environment is, does it make sense? That's it. So every investment that I'm evaluating, for example, FMCG, let's say setting up a plant, okay, or setting up a distribution network. So does it make sense? Does it earn me enough cash back? So all these decisions of does it make sense, they fall under capital budgeting. Okay. So every investment decision ever in your life, for example, if you learn capital budgeting, you can decide whether it makes sense for me to buy a car, or just keep on using Uber, right? So you can take a decision like that if you understand capital budgeting. Or if you understand capital budgeting, you can calculate what is the return I'm going to get for the amount that I'm investing with, professional programs like CFA or FRM or MBA for that matter. So the idea with capital budgeting is you want to evaluate your investment decisions. Okay, so that's capital budgeting. Now let's look at one more example. So the first one that we did was a tobacco company called ITC. But let's look at one more. Okay, so let's think of another company. It's a pharmaceutical company. I've been studying it for some time now, called Laurus Labs. Okay, it's a Indian pharma company with expertise in, or at least it used to have expertise in something called as the ARV APIs. Okay, so the way you want to think of ARV APIs is ARV is antiretroviral, and APIs are, think of think of them as the components that we have in a medicine. For example, if you're buying, let's say, a Crocin. Okay, Crocin is a brand, but the component of that brand is going to be an API. So ARV is antiretroviral. Now, in a very loosely speaking, these are the medicines for HIV/AIDS. Okay, so those are the typical patients who would consume these type of medicines. Now, what happens is Laurus produces these ARV APIs, and it typically sells them to government or quasi government bodies. Okay, in African region, in Latin American region, and for them, this ARV API business is kind of a cash cow. Okay, so every year they generate massive amount of cash coming out of this ARV API business. So again, the question that, what do I do with this cash? So a few years ago, the smart guys sitting at the company, they decided that, let me deploy this cash into a lot of other businesses. So apart from manufacturing API, just ARV, let me get into something like maybe oncology. Okay. So let me still be an API, but let me start doing other APIs. Again, what is an API? API is the key raw material into a medicine, right? If you're consuming a tablet, the key component of that is considered as an API. So let me get into oncology, or maybe let me get into more of a formulation business. So what's a formulation business? I have, I have the APIs, but now I'm going to make the final medicine myself. Okay, so formulation. Or let me get into biotechnology business. So again, who is taking these decisions and on what basis you're taking this decision? So there is a corporate finance team, there is a capital budgeting team that is sitting at the finance department of the company, and those are the guys who are deciding that this is where money is to be deployed. So that's how I want you to think of capital budgeting. So your perspective on capital budgeting is going to be, if you decide to work in this area, you're typically a part of an organization, and you're helping them decide where to deploy that capital. So budgeting of your capital, that is your capital budgeting. Okay, so I hope this kind of gives you a broad overview. Now, how do we do it? How do we deploy our capital? So here are some ground rules. You tell me if this is correct or incorrect. So the number one rule of deploying your capital is focus on profits. What do you think? Is this the way to go about it? When I want to invest, when I want to deploy my capital, do you think that's the way I should do it? My focus should be purely on uh, profitability and nothing else? Yes, no. The answer is and for many of you, it would be a big surprise. The number one rule of deploying your money is not focusing on profits, but rather focusing on cash flows. Okay, not focusing on profits, but rather focusing on cash flows. And this is extremely critical, right? We have to today, in today's session, we have to get out of that mentality of looking at profits, and we have to start looking at more of the cash flows or the cash flow generation ability. So let me give you an example, because you would understand this better. Imagine, you set up a small food cart. All right, you set up a small food cart, and you say that, uh, I today I've been able to make sales of, let's say 100, and the cost that I incurred was maybe 20. So what's your profit? Profit is 80. Great, good news, you're very happy. But the question that you want to ask yourself is that maybe the sales of 100 that I did, it was the employees of a nearby company, and they did not have the cash on them that day. So they said, you know what, we want to have your food today, but we short on cash, we'll come and pay back next month. So if you made the entire sales on credit, whereas the cost of raw material you paid in cash. Okay, so this 100 you've not really received, you might receive it in the future, isn't it? You're not receiving it, it's a credit sales. But this 20 you have spent. So even though your profit is 80, what do you think your cash flow is going to be? Even though your profit is 80, what do you think your cash flow is going to be? Your cash flow is going to be negative 20, right? Because the 100 never received, but the cost. So only that amount of cash went out of my pocket. So the decision making in capital budgeting is always on cash flows. And this is extremely important because as an investor, like in the last 10-12 years, I've come across many companies, okay, where the companies will post great number of profits, right? They will look really attractive when you look at their income statement. But when you look at their cash flow statement, trying to understand how much cash roughly they have received, okay, through their business, we typically call this number as CFO, but that's for some other day. So how much cash they have received, then you start really questioning the business. You start feeling a little less confident about what these guys are really up to. So the first rule that you want to keep at the back of your mind is that we are not going to take a decision based on profitability. We are going to take a decision based on the cash flow that we are going to receive. Okay. So uh, like I generally have a phrase for this. So I call this as, don't think like a Munimji. Okay, I'll explain what a Munimji is. Don't think like a Munimji. Think like a Bania. Don't think like a Munimji. Think like a Bania. Okay, what does it mean? A Munimji means an accountant. Okay, and a Bania means Bania is more like a community in India, but mostly enterprising, very smart business people or entrepreneurs. So a Munimji or an accountant, he would think in the context of what profit will I have in my profit and loss account? It doesn't matter. The way we're going to think of this is we're going to think like a Bania, an entrepreneur, a business person. He will say, how much money went out of my pocket, right? Mera kitna cash gaya, what amount of money went out, and what amount of money I received, and what's the net I'm left with. Correct. So that's how we're going to take decision in the capital budgeting world. And of course, I'll show you more on this later. But that's one. The second thing that you want to keep in mind is the timing of the cash flows matter. Timing of the cash flows matter. Now, what do I mean by this? Easy. Imagine there are two businesses. Okay, let's call A and B. Now, let's say on a timeline, business A gets you, let's say business A gets you maybe 100, okay, and then it gets you 150, and then it gets you 200. The second business, 1, 2, and 3, it gets you 200, it gets you 150, and it gets you 100. Now, let's assume that everything else is exactly same. Okay, everything is same. Risk is same, investment is same. You're looking at these two cash flows. Tell me which business looks more attractive to you. Do you think A is more attractive, or do you think the B business is more attractive? What do you guys think? A or B? You look at this. In terms of money received, you're receiving the same money, right? You're receiving 100, 150, 200, 150, 100. The amount of money that you're receiving is same, but obviously B looks much more attractive, isn't it? And why is that? Because you're receiving more earlier, right? So simple rule with finances that you want to receive. Okay, I'm surprised many of you are saying A, and I'm wondering why would you say A? B is definitely more attractive because the total money that you're receiving is same. Come on, guys, 350, 100, 450. And the total money that you're receiving is also 450, right? But the thing is, here you're receiving them faster. You're receiving a larger amount at the beginning. And the simple rule is the earlier you receive, the better, correct? The larger amount of cash flows that you receive is better. So timing matters. So far we've seen two rules. One rule that we saw, focus on the cash flows. Second rule that we saw is the timing matters. Okay, now there are a few more rules, but let me start doing some practical numbers with you, and then we'll start going to those rules one by one. All right, so here's your first example. Good luck, have fun with it. Let's do a nice business. Uh, let's set up a business, and let's say at time zero in that business, we're going to invest an amount of 1000. Okay. And at time one, time two, and time three, these are the 3 years when we're going to receive an inflow. And let's say first year will receive an amount of 400. Let's say second year maybe 700, and third year let's say 800. Okay, so we're investing 1000 and we're receiving 400, 700, and 800. And we will need something called as a discount rate. I need to discuss more on this. We'll get into it eventually. But discount rate of, let us say, 15 percentage. Okay. Now, if this is the information I've given you about a project, and if I ask you a simple question that, this is the project, what do you think I should do? Should I invest or not? Should I put in my money into the project or not? So clearly, these are forecasted numbers. How much will I receive in year one, year two, year three? So how do you take that decision? So first, one way of thinking is, and the first question I'm going to solve for you. So one way of thinking is, you would say, let me compare cash outflows, all right, versus let me compare cash inflows. Now, what's my cash outflow here? Cash outflow is 1000 versus wait a minute. What's my cash inflow here? So it's 1900. Okay. Does it look attractive? What do you think? Is this attractive? Then should I do this business? Maybe not. Why is that? Because here we are ignoring the timing, right? What we've done is we have ignored the timing. So clearly it doesn't work that way, because cash outflow is at time zero, whereas cash inflow is it time one or time two or time three. So we are not really doing an apple to apple comparison, isn't it? We're not doing an apple to apple comparison. So how do you want to do it? Here's how you think that, let me put things on a timeline. At time zero, okay, my outflow is at time zero, my outflow is outflow. So it's a negative number, 1000. Whereas my inflows are here. So please look at this now. Time one, time two, time three, and time zero. So my inflows are 400, 700, and 800, right? 400, 700, and 800. So if I need to do a comparison, I somehow need to figure out a way to bring all these inflows at time zero so I can do an apple to apple comparison. Correct? Right now, it's not happening. We're not comparing apples to apple. But if I want to do that, what I will have to do is I will have to bring this 400 backwards for 1 year. Okay, so we will call this amount, let's say, as A. Then I will bring 700 backwards for the second year. I will call this amount as B. Bring 800 backwards for 3 years. We'll call it as C. Then we will add up the three numbers, A plus B plus C. And then that would be my present value of inflows. Correct? So what I will compare is, I will compare present value of outflow versus present value of inflow. And maybe that would be a meaningful comparison. So let's do it together. You guys do this with me. Your discount rate is 15 percentage. Okay, I want you to help me with the calculations. I'm firing up my Texas app. I'm going to do it along with you. So second clear TVM, 400 future value, 400 future value, 1 is N, 15 is IY, compute present value. Okay, so the number that I'm getting is, for A, I'm getting, help me out with this number. How much is this? I'm getting this to be 347.8. Okay, I'm going to store it in my first memory slot. So present value of 400 is coming out to be 347. Now I'm going to do 700 as future value, 2 as n, compute present value. And this will come out to be 529.3. I'm going to store it in my second memory slot. Then I'm going to do 800 as future value, 3 as n, compute present value. And help me out with this. How much are you getting? I'm getting 526.0. So I'm just going to write 526. I'm storing it in my third memory slot, STO3 on the calculator. And then I'm going to take a total of the three numbers. Okay. So RCL1 plus RCL2 plus RCL3, the total is coming out to be 1403.13. And now what we have, it looks like, is more of a apple to apple comparison metric. Okay, so what is the comparative metric now? Now the comparative metric for us is the present value of outflows. At time 0, how much money went out from my pocket? It was 1000. And now I'm not comparing that with inflows. I'm comparing that with present value of inflows. Both the amounts are at time 0. It's 1403.13. And now you look at these numbers and now you tell me, what do you think? Do you think this is a good business opportunity now? Just give me a yes or no. Do you think this is an attractive business opportunity? The answer is clearly yes, right? Because we are receiving more than what we are paying out. So what we do in capital budgeting world is we indicate this number with something called as a net present value. Okay, this is referred to as a net present value. And what is a net present value? It is simply a difference of these two numbers. Okay, so it is a difference of present value of inflows minus the present value of outflows. And how much is my net present value here? My net present value is 403.13. Okay, and what they say in the capital budgeting world, they say that your NPV. Okay, so now I'll start addressing this number as NPV. And they say that if your NPV is positive, that means we should accept the project. Okay, accept the project. And clearly now it should make sense to you why they say it like that, because I'm receiving more than what I'm paying. I'm receiving 1400, I'm paying 1000. I'm receiving more, and therefore NPV is positive, and therefore I should accept the project. Okay, so that's your mental model on how to think of NPVs. Okay, now the good news for you is there is a direct button, there is a direct function on the Texas calculator through which we can calculate NPV directly. Most of you know it. If not, I'm going to show it to you. It's pretty simple. You should be able to pick it up fast. All right, so you can do this with me. First, you want to do is you would see that there is a cash flow button in the Texas calculators. So press the cash flow button. I'm going to do this along with you. You would find this in the second row, second column intersection. So press the cash flow button. Now, when you press the cash flow button, you get inside the cash flow function. Okay, so on your screen, you must be seeing CF0 now. Now, once you've done that, what you want to do next is delete if you have saved anything there. So you want to press second and you want to press clear work. Second and clear work. Okay. Now, second and clear work is not same as second and clear TVM. Second button is the same. Clear work is first column, last button, the CEC button. All right. So you press second and clear work. I'm also doing it along with you. So to delete if you have saved anything in the cash flow function. Now on your screen right now, you must be saying CF0 is equal to 0. CF0 means the amount of money that went out at time 0. So what you want to do is you want to press in 1000 use the sign switcher to make it negative, and then without fail, you're going to press the enter button. Okay, so do this with me. 1000, make it negative using the plus minus button, hit the enter button. So when you hit enter, your calculator should look like this. It should show CF0 is equal to minus 1000. Is it showing that to you? Is it showing CF0 is equal to minus 1000? Great. All right. Now what you do next is press downward arrow. Okay. And when you press downward arrow, you will see cash flow 1. Okay. Cash flow 1. Now what was your cash flow 1? It was a positive number. How much was that? 400. 400, right? So save. So press 400 and then press the enter button. 400 and enter. It's very important that you press the enter button. Otherwise, it will not show you the equal to sign. Okay, so please make sure you hit the enter button. Then press downward arrow 2 times. When you press it once, you will see something called as F01. That's frequency. By default, that's always 1. I'll show you how to use it a little later. Press downward arrow 1 more time. And now what you would see is you would see CO2 on the calculator. That's your second cash flow. So what's the second cash flow? 700. So say 700, 700, enter button. Don't forget enter. Press downward arrow twice. So let me do it. 700, enter, downward arrow, downward arrow. Come on to cash flow 3. And what is my cash flow 3? 800. So let's enter 800. Okay, enter button and done. All the cash flows are entered. Okay, so let me get it done. 800, enter. Now, on the right hand side of your CF button, what button do you see? On the right hand side of CF, you'd see a NPV button. Press that. When you press the NPV button, the first thing that you'd see there is an I, okay, and that is your interest rate or discount rate. So you want to do 15, enter there. 15, okay, enter. So you enter the discount rate and then press the downward arrow. Okay, then press the downward arrow and tell me what you see. You would see NPV is equal to 0. All right. And then what you want to press is you want to press the CPT button on the calculator. It's the first button, first column, first row. And when you press the CPT button, tell me what are you seeing there? When you do press CPT, what do you see there? When you do press the button, you would see, press the compute button and you would see 403.13964 as your NPV. Understood? So what your calculator did is it did the entire process all by itself, right? What it did is it took the present value of all the 3 cash flows based on the discount rate that you gave it to it. Then it calculated the difference between the inflows and outflows, and it did the difference between the inflows and outflows, and you directly got the NPV value of 403. And what do you conclude out of it? You conclude that, see, my NPV is positive. And if NPV is positive, what do you want to do with this project? You want to accept the project, right? That's the decision-making framework that we generally work with. I hope this is making sense and you're comfortable with this calculations now. Is it easy? Are you following what's happening? Okay. Let's practice a little more. All right. Let me give you few more questions to practice. Let's do a different color box for this question. All right, next question. Okay, now this one, I want you guys to solve it. Okay. And I want you to solve it both the ways, at least for the first few questions. First few ones, I want you to do it traditionally with formula and with the help of calculator function, just so that we are really good with our concepts. So I'm going to draw the timeline for you right away. Let's say we have a project where at time zero, okay, so this is my timeline. At time zero, let's say we are deploying a capital of maybe 200 mils. Okay, so the data is in dollar millions. So we're deploying a capital of 200, and let's say it's a 4-year project: year 1, year 2, year 3, and year 4. First year you received cash flow of 50. Second year you received cash flow of let's say 100. Then you receive a cash flow of 150, and then in the final year you receive let's say 200. Okay, and let us say the discount rate is, let us say the discount rate, the rate at which you want to discount the cash flows backwards, let us say is a simple 10%. Okay, now what I want you to do is I want you to calculate NPV using both the methods. I I want you to calculate NPV using both the methods. One, calculate NPV. Then second, also use the TVM row, just so that we get a decent practice and calculate NPV. Give it a shot, see if you can do it. I'm also doing it along with you. Do it both the ways. Okay, do it the usual way with the cash flow function, and do it with the TVM row also. All right, I'm going to help you solve this. Let's do the cash flow function first. This should be easy. So press the cash flow button of your calculator. I'm going to repeat keys one final time. Then say second clear work. Second clear work. Clear work is first column, last button. CF0 on your screen, that should be 200, make it negative. Don't forget to press the enter button. 200 negative, enter. Come on to cash flow 1. What was the cash flow 1? 50. So 50, enter. Okay, let me do it along with you. Cash flow 1, 50, enter. Press downward arrow a couple of times. You will reach on cash flow 2. Was it 100? Yeah, it was 100. So 100, enter, downward arrows a couple of times. So 100, enter, downward arrows a couple of times. Come on to cash flow 3, 150, enter, downward arrows. 150, enter, downward arrows. A cash flow 4, Okay, by the way, they use a CO here in the calculator. So a cash flow 4, it's actually 0.4. So messed up the sequence here. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 200, enter, downward arrows. So 200, enter. Hit the NPV button. When you press the NPV button on the right hand side, you see I. Say 10, enter, 10, enter. Press downward arrow. It shows you NPV is equal to 0. Press the CPT button. CPT button, and I'm sure you're getting 177.39. All right, so that's how you do it with the cash flow function. Now, those of you who've got this right, give me the command word. The command word for today's session is yo-yo. Now, the number of yo's you give me is a function of how well you've understood this. Okay, so if you feel that, I have nailed it, I kind of know how to do this in depth now, you can give me more yo-yos or you can give me less. It really depends on, where you are with your learning. All right, so now how do you pull this off on a TVM row? Let's do it on a TVM row. 200 negative, so I'm not really writing the negative yet. 1, 2, 3, 4, 50, 100, 150, 200. All of these numbers, I need to take them back to time 0. Right? I need to discount them backwards to time 0. The only reason why I'm making you do TVM, even though we have the cash flow function, is so that if there is a tricky question comes, you have 10 different ways of handling it. All right. All of these we want to discount at the rate of 10%, and then we want to add them. Okay, so let's do it. Even if you got the answer right, a practice isn't going to hurt. Do this with me. 50 future value, second clear TVM, 50 future value. 1 is N, 10 is IY, compute present value. I'm getting 45.4 STO1. 100 future value, 2 is N. I'm just overwriting it. 100 future value, 2 is N, compute present value, and we get about 82. I'm going to store it in the second memory slot. 150 future value, 3 is N, and we'll get about 112. I'm going to store it in the third memory slot. And 200 future value, 4 as N, compute present value. I'm getting 136. Let me store that in the fourth memory slot. Let me add up the 4 so that I will get present value of inflows. RCL1 45 plus RCL2 plus RCL3 plus RCL4. I'm getting present value of all the inflows, present value of outflows versus inflows, present value of inflows. The number that I'm getting is 377.399. Okay, can you please confirm if this is correct? So we get about 377 here, and what do we get in the outflows? We get about 200. All right, so outflows are about 200, inflows are about 377, and when I take the difference of this, the NPV is going to be 177.39. So whether you do it this way or you do it that way, you do it the TVM row or you do it the cash flows, the answer is going to be exactly the same. Are you feeling comfortable with this now? Okay. Let's do one more. Let me throw in a slightly different variety now. Okay. Let's do one more. Okay, let's go this spectrum now. All right, here's the timeline. here's a timeline. Time 0, you're going to invest 1,000. Time 1, time 2, time 3, time 4, you're going to receive 100 each. Time 5, you're going to receive 800. Time 6, you're going to receive 100 again. Okay, so it's maybe I should have one more cash flow. Time 7, you're going to receive, let's say, 900. So it's kind of a weird business where you get lumpy cash flows, 100, 100, 100, and then 800, 100, and 900. Let's keep the discount rate at a standard 10%. Okay. Now I just want you to use the NPV function or the CF function. Okay. And I want you to calculate NPV, improvise if you can, try to guess that what that F button is about. And don't be too creative, please. F button in this context, in the context of cash flow function, try to guess what's that about. Try to think what is the use of that F button. Let me give you a hint. That F stands for the frequency. It's the frequency button. So now see if you can make use of it. All right. I'm going to do this. See how it is done. So again, should not be very difficult. Press the cash flow button, then press second clear work. Okay, let me do this along with you. Cash flow button, second clear work. Now, cash flow 0. Okay, cash flow 0 is going to be whatever amount you've parked in, 1,000, negative, enter. Okay, so 1,000, negative, enter. Then press downward arrow, come on to the cash flow 1, and your cash flow 1 is 100. Okay, hit the enter button. Then come downward arrow, this time only once, and you will have F01. That is frequency of 01. Now, please listen to me carefully. What you want to do is, you want to calculate how many times is 100 repeated here. 1, 2, 3, 4. Should I take this 100 also? Should I take this 100 also? Should I take this 100 also? No. Right? Of course we should not. We take the consecutive hundreds. Right? How many times the cash flow is? How many times the hundreds repeated consecutively. So it's repeated 4 times. So frequency here is going to be 4. Enter. Okay. And then the beauty is I don't have to keep on entering that 104 times now. Now my calculator is smart enough. It understood 100 was repeated 4 times consecutively. So I'm free to enter the subsequent cash flow, which means my cash flow 2 now is going to be 800. Enter. And calculator is smart. It understands that now the cash flow 2 is actually the 5th year cash flow. Okay, so let's enter that. 800, enter. Then go to cash flow 3. cash flow 3. And how much is that going to be? That's going to be 100. 100, enter. Okay, so let me enter that 100 and cash flow 4. Cash flow 4, 900, enter. Now your calculator is smart enough. It understood it's actually the 7th cash flow. So 900, enter. Then hit the NPV button. Then press the NPV button. I is going to be 10, enter. So I is going to be 10, enter, downward arrow. It will show you NPV. Press the compute button. And can you tell me what answer are you getting? What is the answer you're getting? What's your answer? Three, 2.01. That's it. So that's how you make use of the frequency button. So that's how you make use of the frequency button on the Texas calculators. Okay, easy. Should not be very challenging. If you get questions like these on the exam, I would say these are easy brownie points, right? These are like free marks on the exam. If this does show up on the exam, you should be very happy, because you should be able to solve easily. It's just plug and play. Just throw in the numbers in your calculator and crank out the answers. Are you feeling a little comfortable with this? Now, how do we use it in practice? Like, how do we make use of NPV in practice? So let me give you a few more practical perspective and different ways of looking at things. So this is a first-hand story that I'm going to tell you. I cannot use the name of the company, but I can give you a perspective of what happens. Okay. So this story I heard from a friend of mine. At that time she was the head of corporate finance of a listed Lala company in India. Okay, now she's the CFO of that organization. So what's a Lala company? A Lala company is a company where there is a Lala sitting at the top of the company, a promoter driven company. And typically you call some of these promoters Lalas because they have a listed company, but they run the business as if it's their ghar ka business, as if they own 100% of it, and as if they can do whatever they want. Like, there is very less professionalism there. Okay. So this company where she was working with, and she was handling the corporate finance affairs. So their primary business was manufacturing. In order to protect, I'm going to change a few things, okay, so that the identity is kind of concealed. But let's say the business was manufacturing of pipes. So business was manufacturing of, they were into manufacturing of pipes. Now the promoter gets up one fine day in the morning, and he goes to the corporate finance team, and he says, guys, I'm thinking that maybe we should get into let's say maybe we should get into textile business. Okay, we have excess cash coming from pipes. Maybe we should get into the textile business. So get your corporate finance team busy and give me a report after a month. What do you think of we what do you think of we starting a textile business, let's say someplace in Gujarat? Okay. Now the corporate finance team gets busy. They hire a consultant. They start getting access to data. They start building massive spreadsheets. Because see, on a CFA exam, they're going to give you what money went out at time zero, what money came in at time one, time two. But how stupid is that? Because in practice, you don't get, when you're dealing with a real life project, they don't tell you what cash flow you get in year one. You need to figure that out yourself, isn't it? So you try to forecast, what would be my capital requirement, what would be my working capital requirement, how will I get that money, then what will the numbers look like, how much will I manufacture, what would be my sales in year one, year two, year three, what would be my cost in year one, year two, year three. And for modeling every small part of it, your team spends massive amount of time gathering intelligence for the market. And the team did spend a lot of time, and towards the end of the month they were ready with their spreadsheet, their tentative NPV calculations. You also do sensitivity, you also do scenarios and all of that. Okay, so you do sensitivity analysis. What if things go wrong? uh, what if sales is not this much? You do scenario analysis, and then you typically make a presentation to the management, right, to the CEOs, that, sir, this is what we've been able to do. Now the poor guys worked for almost a month, and the promoter apparently had a dream. Okay, so again he comes one fine day in the morning and he says, remember I told you that we have to work on this this textile project. I want you to drop that for a while. Okay, don't do it. Here is the next project. Okay, so it's very random in India with some of these lala companies or promoter driven companies. Not a lot of smart thinking goes into it. But in practice, if you do want to do a capital budgeting project, it's not as easy as putting this in a TVM row or putting this in a cash flow function. Once you have the numbers, calculating NPV is easy, right? Once you have the numbers, like once you have inflow and outflow, you can always do the NPV. But the real challenge is, how do you get those numbers? The real challenge is, how do you get these numbers? Do you get these numbers directly out of a whim? Do you get these numbers out of a CFA textbook? No, you have to work really hard. You have to deploy your resources, hire consultants, forecast, and then make sense of these numbers. But again, how do you use them in practice, right? So let's say this Lala company, after textile, the next big idea that he got is, let's get into tiles business. Okay, by the way, the businesses are true, but I've camouflaged what was first, what was second, just to hide the identity of the company. So, so let's say A, okay, B, we have two projects. Let's say we have a pipe project. Okay, sorry, we have a textile project. Let's say we have a tiles business. Okay, what you do is you do your NPV analysis on both of them. And let's say one of them gives you an NPV of maybe 200 crore Indian rupees. 1 crore is 10 million. So it's equivalent to 2000 million Indian rupees. And this one gives you let's say a 500 crore Indian rupees. And let's assume for the timing that these are mutually exclusive. Okay. For some reason, these are projects that you can't do together. Okay, for some reason, for the timing, just assume that. So if these are mutually exclusive, tell me, which one will you do? Will you do textile or will you do tiles? Will you do A or B? Which project do you think is more attractive? Come on. Do you think A is a little more attractive, or do you think B is more attractive? Clearly, if you have to choose just one, mutually exclusive means either I can do A or B. Either I can choose A or B. I can't do both, right? So if I have to choose one, I'm simply going to choose the one with higher NPV, right? That's how you want to think of it. But imagine if they are not mutually exclusive. Okay, they are not mutually exclusive. Okay, that means you can do both if you want, right? Will you do both? Will you accept the 200 crores and 500 crores? Maybe yes, right? Maybe depending on the availability of capital, and my risk appetite, but it looks like both of them are positive NPV projects. So why not? So it depends on, availability of capital, and it also depends on whether I'm allowed to do both the projects. So in real life, you'd always have these difficulties, right? For example, it could be as simple as you have a small store somewhere, you want to take franchisee, right? So should I take franchisee of Baskin Robbins, or should I take franchisee of Naturals? So you have just one shop, so you can just choose one of the two. So when you take decision like that, it's mutually exclusive. But if these are really good projects and you decide that, what, let me go and get one more shop, and then maybe I can do both the projects. All right, so this is how you in general think about it. Now let me put a pin on this NPV concept for a minute, and let me take you to the next concept, and then we'll try to integrate the two things together. Okay, now next concept is one of my favorites. It's a really, really useful concept, and I'm going to help you learn. I'm going to explain you the concept with the help of a very simplistic case study, so that you understand the true spirit of the concept. All right, so next 15 minutes are extremely important. I want you to kind of be focused here. So let's say we have this one individual, okay, who's kind of developed a recent obsession with stock market. So he's developed a recent obsession with stock market, and he wants to kind of start trading, investing, whatever, into the markets. But unfortunately, he does not have a capital. Okay, but he's a smart guy. So what he does is he goes to a bank. So let's say this is bank, I bank. Okay, let's say IC bank, or let's say ICI bank. You fill in rest of the story. Okay, so this is one bank. He goes to the bank, and he says, I like trading. I have developed an interest for it, but I don't have capital. Bank says, no problem. You have a little bit of gold in your house. You have your own house. Mortgage that with us. Pledge that with us, and we'll give you a loan. Okay, so bank gives him a loan. Okay, some sort of a personal loan maybe. Let's say he gets a loan at 15% per annum. Now this guy takes that money, and let's say an amount of maybe, I don't know, let's just say 100. Okay, just for example. So he takes that 100, and he takes that money and he deploys that money. Okay, let us say into markets. Okay, so now the money is deployed. Now the money is deployed in markets, equity market, stock market. And what happens to him? He gets lucky. The 100 that he invests, by the end of the year, that money has become, let us say, 125. Okay, now 100 became 125. Now if you are looking at this project as an outsider, okay, and let's assume that this is something that we have forecasted. It's not happened yet, but we're forecasting that this might happen. What do you think? Will you allow this gentleman to do the project? Will your decision be accept, or will your decision be reject? If these are the numbers which are in front of you, will your decision be accept, or will it be reject? What will you tell this guy, to do it or not to do it, assuming that this is what you forecasted with a reasonable probability? Yes, accept, reject. What do you think? Clearly you'd say accept. And why would you say except? Because the return that he's earning, right, on the investment, 100 is becoming 125. The return that he's earning is 25 percentage, correct? So his cost of borrowing is 15. His cost of borrowing is 15, but the return that he's earning is 25, right? It's just 1 year. 100 became 125 in 1 year's time. So clearly he's earning more than the cost at which he's borrowing, correct? So this 25, guys, okay, and I want you to listen to me very carefully now. Next few words out of my mouth, extremely carefully. This 25%, what he's earned on this project, okay, this in the world of finance, we give it a fancy name. We call this as IRR. And IRR stands for internal rate of return. So if you open up a textbook, you would see a fancy definition. Okay, you at times almost like weird definitions. You would say you'd see the definition of IRR, which says IRR is the rate at which NPV is zero, and a lot of that stuff. That's not how I want you to think of IRR. Wait a minute. The way we want to think of IRR very simply is how much I am earning on the project. Now here I did example of an individual, but just think of a business. Forget an individual. Just think of a business. Okay, if some business is able to raise money, if some business is able to raise money at 15%, and if it's able to deploy that money, if it's able to earn on that money 25%, is that a good business? Yes, why not? Right, that's the incremental thinking we want to have. I'm getting my money at 15 and I'm deploying at 25. So this 15% that you see, okay, this 15% that you see, very loosely speaking in finance, we call this as the cost of capital. Okay, you'd always hear people talking about this. You'd always hear people talking about compare cost of capital with what you're earning, right? Compare cost of capital with the internal rate of return. And a simple framework that we use, as long as IRR is more than the cost of capital, it's a good project. We want to do it. Okay. Now, let's take the same example and let's play around a little bit on the calculator. So now what I want you to do is press the cash flow button of your calculator, please. Okay, press the cash flow button. I'm going to do this along with you. Then in cash flow zero, how much you invested? Just look at the right hand side. How much did I invest? I invest 100, right? So cash flow zero, 100 negative, enter. 100 negative, enter. Then cash flow one, my stock value was how much? 125. So make it 125, enter. All right, so 125, enter. Then which button do you see on the right hand side of NPV button? On the right hand side of NPV button, you should see a button called IRR. So hit the IRR button and then press compute. Press compute and tell me what are you seeing there. Hit the IRR button and press compute and tell me what are you seeing there. You would see 25% or 25 there, and that is what your IRR is. Okay, and that is how you're going to calculate IRR. That is how you're going to calculate IRR on the Texas calculator. And the rule that you want to keep at the back of your mind is, as long as IRR is higher than the cost of capital, as long as I'm earning more than the cost of capital, my NPV is always going to be positive. Okay, now just for fun, what I want you to do is, after having done this, press the NPV button. Okay, press the NPV button. press the NPV button. They will ask you what is the I. Now you'll understand what this I is. This I is nothing but your cost of capital. Okay, and how much is that? 15. So hit 15. 15, enter. Okay, and press NPV and press compute, and you would see that your NPV is about 8.69. Okay, now what is the thinking behind that 8.69? Okay, how do you want to think of it? Very loosely speaking, I borrowed 100 at 15, I invested 25, so I got 125. If I have to pay back to the bank, I have to pay 15, right? So roughly after a year, how much I'm left with? After a year, I'm left with 10. So very broadly, if I take present value of that 10, it should come out to be 8.69. That's how much I'm left with in this project. Okay, so that is the concept of NPV. And the rule that you're going to keep at the back of your mind, as long as IRR is greater than cost of capital. Okay, as long as IRR is greater than cost of capital. IRR is what I earn. Cost of capital is what I need to pay. As long as this condition is satisfied, you tell me my NPV is going to be what? My NPV is going to be a positive number, and my decision-making metric is going to be accept. Okay, so don't think of NPV as some fancy mathematical number. Do not memorize the definition given in your textbooks, CFA curriculum, or whatever. Just think of IRR. Okay, just think of IRR as simply what you earn. And what you earn needs to be compared with the cost of capital, and then you want to take your final decision. Is this clear? Are you guys comfortable with this? Is this making sense to you? Okay. So what we're going to do now is all the examples that we did since morning. Okay. We're going to simply go ahead and calculate IRRs for them. Okay. So let's go and start calculating IRR for each one of them. It'll be fun. It'll be good practice. And intuitively, if your NPV came out to be positive, you know that IRR is going to be more discount rate. Now you know that discount rate was your cost of capital, right? So let's insert these cash flows into my cash flow function. Let's calculate what IRR is. Okay, let's get some good practice for this. Second cash flow button. Now I'm going to pick up some speed. Cash flow 0, 1000 negative, enter. Cash flow 1, 400, enter. Cash flow 2, 700, enter. Cash flow 3, 800, enter. Press the IRR button, press compute. Discount rate is 15. The IRR that I'm getting is 35.36. I need your help to confirm if this is correct. Please help me out. Please confirm if this is correct. And if yes, look at this. My discount rate was 15. That was the cost of getting that money, getting that 1000. But I'm earning 35 here. I'm earning more. Of course, my NPV is going to be a positive number. And we could confirm that with this positive 403. Right? So it's costing me 15 to bring the money in, and I'm earning 35 on that money. Great news. I want to do this business. Let's look at the next example. Okay, picking a little speed on this now. Let's calculate IRR for this project. Okay, let's see how much we get. So I'm hitting the cash flow button. I'm saying second clear work, 200 negative, enter. Cash flow 150, cash flow 200, cash flow 3, 150. Come on, pick up some speed, guys. Cash flow 4, 200. Press the IRR button, press compute. I'm getting 38.25. Please confirm if this is correct. 38.25. And clearly, again, I'm earning way more than my cost of capital. Looks like a really good business. By looking at these two, I can confirm it's going to be a positive NPV. And when we did that, we did get a positive NPV. Right? We did get 177. Moving on. Next example. Here, Let's calculate IRR for this. Here my cost of capital was 10%, right? This was my cost of capital. Let's figure out what is the IRR for this business. Okay, so again, I want you to pick up some speed. Cash flow button, second clear work. 1000 negative is cash flow 0. Cash flow 1 is 100. Frequency is 4. Cash flow 2 is 800. Cash flow 3 is 100 again. Cash flow 4 is 900 again. IRR compute, and I'm getting 16.47. So now it is also higher than this cost of capital, but the distance is narrowing, right? Look at the previous example. In the previous example, large distance, correct? So we will say large distance means I have a very high margin of safety here. Okay, so I'm throwing in one more concept up to you. High margin of safety. Something goes wrong, either my cost of capital increases or IRR decreases, it's fine because the distance is very large. So it's a safe project. Look at this one. Look at this one. Uh, Cost of capital 15. I have a reasonable margin of safety. So I'll still say high margin of safety, right? Because cost is 10, sorry, cost is 15, IRR is 35, right? But in this example, the third one, the distance is a little less, correct? The distance is a little less. So here I will say I have a relatively lower margin of safety. If things go wrong, for some reason my cost of capital goes up, or if some reason my IRR goes down, because at the end of the day, these are forecasted numbers, so things can go wrong. So because the distance is narrower, my risk is a little higher in this project, right? And that's the beauty of IRR. What it does is it gives you a sense on, how safe that project is for you. NPV doesn't do it. NPV gives you an absolute amount. NPV is 200, NPV is 300. It doesn't help much. But NPV doesn't help much. But this IRR gives you a comparison. It allows you to compare COC versus the IRR, right? That's the beauty of it. That's why I love this number so much. And I think that's it. These are 3 examples we did. Great. Now, one last quick concept, and then I'm going to give you your morning break. How do you do IRR in practice? Okay, because I told you IRR could be done anywhere. So all of us, have invested our money into some or the other assets, right? And we either receive money, we pay money. There's a really cool function. There's a really cool function in Microsoft Excel, okay, which allows you to calculate IRR for any project. So that cool function in Microsoft Excel is called XIRR. Okay. So if you have an Excel file, if you have an Excel software or a spreadsheet with you, you can calculate IRR literally for any type of situation. That formula in Excel does the job for you, okay, in Microsoft Excel. So I'm just going to give you a live demonstration of how it is done. Just give me a minute here. So you can think of, the most weirdest of situation, doesn't matter. Okay. Let's say, for example, today I decide to do a project. Okay. So today I decide to invest, let's say, let's say 5,000 Indian rupees into some project. Okay. And what I'm being told is that if I make this investment, then after 25 days, they will give me, let's say, they will give me an amount of 1,000 maybe. Okay. And then 40 days after 25 days, in the next 40 days, or after 40 days, after 40 days of 25 days. What I mean by that is 25 plus these next 40, they will probably give me, something like 3,000 rupees. Okay. And let's say after 90 days from the original 40 days, I will receive a cash flow of maybe 2,500. Okay. I'm just creating a hypothetical scenario for us. It could be anything. Now, if you have a XIRR function, you can easily figure out how much have you earned on this project on an annualized basis. Okay. So how do you do it? How do you do this? Just look at this carefully. You will say is equal to today. Okay, so make use of the today is equal to today function. Okay, so this is the date today. So we are 14th March. Now 25 days from today. So plus 25. Very easy. Just add up, just add up 25 to this. And 40 days from today. So this plus 40. Okay, so 40 days from the previous cash flow date. Okay, so I mean, that's how I'm assuming it. Okay, that's how I'm assuming it. So let's say that's 18th May and 90 days from 18th May. And you can make whatever assumptions you want. I mean, depending on, how the cash flows are given to you. Okay, so in Excel, a date is actually a number. So you can write formulas like this. It works. All right. And then what you do is you just put in the cash flows there. So here I invested 5,000 and then I got 1,000, I got 3,000, I got 2,500. Okay. And what you simply do then, and this is the beauty of it, is you use this formula. Please look at my formula carefully. It is equal to XIRR. Okay. Why X at the beginning of IRR? Because we are going to insert the dates. That's why this function is so beautiful. XIRR. It will ask me to select the values. Okay. So let's select the values, comma. It will ask me to select the dates. Okay. So let's select the dates and close the bracket, hit enter, and there you go. I'm getting a really good IRR on this, 191%. And that's kind of intuitive because if you look at this, I'm earning 3,000 plus 2,500. So that's 5,500, 6,500. So I'm earning 1,500 on 5,000, but in a very short time period because I'm investing in March, I'm exiting in August. So within these, 5 odd months, within these 5 months, I'm earning 1,500 on 5,000. So that's roughly 30%. And which means, on an annualized basis, I'm making pretty good returns here, right? So that's how you make use of the XIRR function. And it will tell you how much you're earning, which can be compared with your cost of capital. Okay, so I hope you've understood what we did today. Today's YouTube session is going to end here. Now, what is going to happen is this is 9:38 India time. You guys will get a 25-minute break. So you can come back at about 10:05. And the subsequent part of the session is going to happen on the Zoom panel. Okay, where you can log in at about 10:05 and then you can we'll continue from where we're leaving here. Okay. All those people who are going to watch this video at a later stage, the video is going to remain on YouTube. And all those people who are going to watch this on YouTube, if you have any queries or if you have anything to ask, you can put your questions in the comment box and me and my team will try to answer that. So with this, thank you very much. And now I'll see you guys inside the Zoom panel in 25 minutes.